Okay, so with that, we're going to get started. It's been an exciting day. I can't tell you how excited that we're one of the last presentations. That's always like awesome. But one thing before I kind of kick it off to Michael, I've been approached at least a dozen times today by people saying that this is the first time they've ever seen me in a tie. And so I want to explain, probably one of the last times I wore a tie was a year ago today. A lot of you will remember that my son was bar mitzvahed, January of 2025. And my son, who likes to wear NBA graphic t-shirts and oversized shorts or sweatpants all the time, couldn't understand why he needed to wear a tie to his bar mitzvah. And I remember explaining to him that it was important. And it was, even though he might think it's stupid, it's a reflection of the amount of work that he put into preparing for that day, as well as a reflection of the importance of the moment of inflection that he was at as he was going to enter Jewish adulthood. And so as I packed my suitcase, getting ready for this, I figured I'd wear a coat, and I was putting the shirt in, and I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to wear a tie. I wasn't thinking about the fact that we were so late in the day and I was going to have to wear the tie all day. I thought it would come off after the presentation, which it surely will. So, Joanne, if you can, well, I'll try it. Yeah, mixed success on the remote here. Okay. I just want to take a second and thank, you see the names of the committee, you see the names of the professionals. The amount of work, you know, based on our old technology and things like that, that has to go into our quarterly finance committee meetings and getting ready for something as big as a budget is pretty Herculean. Is that the right pronunciation? Herculean. And so I want to thank the professionals for all the work they put into gathering all the information, as well as the committee for having a flurry of meetings during the holidays, which is totally unfair, and I apologize. And this coming year, we are going to try to move up the calendar so that you're not meeting with us during your winter breaks. And before we flip to any other slides, I do want to take a moment of privilege here. I know Barak has done it, and I know it's been said other times. As Michael transitions to his newer role and hands off the baton to Carrie, who I am super excited about, this board should really recognize the impact of what Michael has done over the last year and a half to 2 years. We all remember where we were in a board meeting when there was kind of this eye-opening moment of kind of where we were financially as an agency. And Michael had stepped into a role that I'm sure he wasn't looking for and worked, I don't even know how many hours, to try to understand where we were financially, to work with this board and me specifically over the last year and a half to, you know, try to come up with a strategy to get us out of it. I know it has been said a lot of times, but I need it to be said from me. Thank you, Michael. And similar theme, when David called me up about a year and a half ago and asked if I would chair this committee, first of all, I was an idiot. But second of all, I remember saying to him, and then soon thereafter talking to Michael and saying that of course I would do it. I care so much about JCCs. I care so much about the association. But there'd be two principles that would guide everything we did, and it would be transparency and responsibility. And I've tried to live up to that. I know Michael has, and I know Carrie will, and Barak and David and Lisi. And you know, when you think about it from a transparency standpoint, especially given the pasted together Excel spreadsheets we have been working out of, we've tried to provide you as much information as possible. As you walk into meetings like this to approve a budget, some people don't need the level of detail. We try to provide you as much information so that you can come into these conversations armed and feeling comfortable that you know what you're voting on. From a responsibility standpoint, just think about, I mean, I alluded to it a second ago, where we've been over recent years. Just 12 months ago, when Barak was wowing us with his 3-center idea, we were looking at a set of financials where in 2024 we realized a 7-figure deficit. We were approving, for the first time in years, a budget that was balanced without any idea if we could execute on that. And this board unanimously said, no, we are. That's what we need to do in this period of transition as we take on a new leader. We have to say enough. And we need to put in place a financial structure to execute all of the awesome impacts that we do, but we need to do it responsibly. And so as you see the slides and as hopefully what you read in your packets, keep in mind that while we shoot for the stars in the ways that our leadership has outlined and the ways that future funders are going to step forward, we're going to do so responsibly. So it was in your pre-packet, but I just want to, I've had a couple people ask me for some clarification. So process-wise, what we're going to be looking at is a budget where the professional team took last year's budget and rolled forward, adjusted for kind of known changes, whether that's salaries or grants that have expired or new grants that have come in, kind of known adjustments. We've taken last year's budget, rolled it forward, layered in some new things that we're calling committed, and Michael will walk you through as he's going through the different centers. He will explain which things fall into these categories. But there's a category called committed, which are new things that we're layering on top of last year's budget, but for which, through the generosity of people like David and Lisi and many more, that we already have or will have by the end of the first quarter money in the bank. And again, this will all get walked through for you in charts and slides and things like that in the moments to come. But then there are more. I mean, obviously, we want to execute on the framework that we just spent the last several hours talking about. And so the budget that we will approve will be rolling for the 2025 budget and layering in the things we know we can afford to do in 2026. But if this board steps forward in the framework of TICVA, you will see other initiatives, not part of the budget we are voting on, but outlined in the budget discussion that show what things are in various priorities as those funds come in the door. So I just want everybody to kind of understand that framework. And without further ado, I will hand it over to Michael.
So if you look at the list, I bet you never thought that finance was a team sport. But it is. There we go. Let's start here and pause. Right? This is my third time up here doing a projection, and this is the first time I can say we are projecting an operating surplus. Woo! All right, we're done. There we go. Okay, so what I'm going to share here are some of the highlights and key financial drivers of last year, the year that just ended. So the first was obviously the operating surplus. In the Center for Talent, we received, was alluded to earlier, a grant from the Mandel Foundation for Kivunim, Pathways, that supports new execs. That grant was almost $300,000. We spent $116,000 of it in 2025. It will follow the cohort in 2026. Corporate sponsorships totaled $363,000, which is $136,000 better than budget. Right, that was about our development team going out and raising money for our conferences on the side of their desk. And working seriously overtime to do that. Typically, our only major corporate sponsorship has been Coca-Cola, which is $210,000 a year. We have learned from this experience that we have a new revenue stream to build going forward. Professional conference, right? This was the first time we have been back in person with the professional conference, ProCon, since the pandemic. Huge achievement, unbelievable attendance, participation, as well as feedback afterwards. In the Center for Jewish Peoplehood, JCC Maccabi Games, we piloted the campus games. JCC Maccabi generated a $1.1 million surplus. This is obviously one of the key drivers to how the organization ended the year. In the Center for Israel Engagement, we had a $476,000 loss, and that was $372,000 below budget. So I want to explain this a little bit. First and foremost, that loss reflects a coding error on an invoice that came in late in 2025 and accidentally got recorded in 2024. So as a result, our revenue in 2024, which we had already presented our forecast on, was better than we had forecasted, and our revenue in 2025 was less than we had planned on it being. Secondly, there were a couple of invoices that came in late in 2025 that really related to 2024, but we'd already closed our books. So that was like a double whammy for 2025 versus 2024. So I think if we stop for a second and just think about what's driving this, this is all around Mitabrim, right, which is our connections program in partnership with the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs. This has been a 2-year grant program that we had. This program put over $3 million directly in the field to JCCs to support their Israel programming. It has been a tremendous success when we look at the feedback from participants, the number of participants. So this has been a huge plus, and if we looked at these numbers that were in the wrong years over the 2-year period, it was a great result because we also received a considerable amount of overhead to support the association's work in general. So I think that's why this looks bad this year. If we went back, last year would have looked better, but over the course of the 2 years, we're doing just fine. JWB just received a new $1 million grant at the end of last year. This was the first year that we had the grant. It was year 1 of 3. So that was launched in 2025 as well. In what we're calling general infrastructure, general support and infrastructure, the other main generator of our surplus was the fact that we paid no rent in 2025, right? We had budgeted and planned to move into our space in July. That didn't happen. We just moved in last week. So because we had negotiated our lease to get free rent before we moved in instead of after we moved in, we had the benefit of a year of no rent. Had we done it the other way, we would have had $1 million in rent. We would not have a balanced budget. And so as a result, this savings is a huge win for the association, and we are now starting to pay rent as of last week. The stakeholder partnership rollout has been a tremendous success, as you've heard. We are up to 148 JCCs and JCC camps. And if you look at the field investment from 24, 25, and 26, you can see we've gone from $3.37 million to $3.6 million, and we are projecting $4.4 million next year. This reflects the increasing investment the field has made in JCC Association. All right, there's no way around it. We have to get to the numbers. So what we're showing you is the projection agency-wide for 2025. I will kind of go through kind of why we have these variances in different areas, just to give you a flavor for what's going on. So we'll start with revenue. In contributions, overall, we were under budget, And that really relates to the fact that after a record year of board campaign in 2024, we were a little too aggressive in budgeting 2025. So we ended up a little bit below budget there. Grant revenue variance primarily reflects JCC Maccabi fundraising success. And also we received a grant to support Barak's onboarding because while he didn't start officially until July 1, he was working with us since January. So that's what's driving our grant revenue better. Government grants we just talked about in terms of the MODA grant. That's showing you what we were behind and what got put in the wrong place. Corporate sponsorship success is really related to Mifgosh and Procon. In terms of affiliate investment, we did a little bit better than what we budgeted. I will tell you, I don't believe we would have hit that number had we not started the stakeholder partnership process. It really got our JCCs and camps to start paying their dues, now we call investment, earlier than they might otherwise have. Program fees are under budget mainly because we ran fewer trips to Israel as a result of the war, and visa processing of J1 visas for shlichim for camps was down and under budget. I don't know if that also was the result of people not coming from Israel, but that ended up being off budget as well. Rental income and other income was better than budget for two reasons. One, we sort of quote unquote leased an employee to Pittsburgh JCC to help them run the Maccabi games, and they reimbursed us for that, so that shows up in our other income. And rental income is better because we didn't move when we thought, so our tenants stayed longer and we ended up doing better on rental income. Interest income is significantly better than budget. We assumed that interest rates would be cut sooner than they were. You know, we were very much in favor of the Fed chair holding out. And as a result, we did much better on our overnight investments, which is where we park all of our cash and have it working for the association to help offset our operating budget. The endowment release is a little under budget, and that's because there are certain endowments that we only release funds on when we spend money. In Marin, we did not have an Israel trip last year. They're actually there as we speak. And so we didn't release money for the trip, so it's just a product of timing more than anything else. Questions on revenue? I can tell we're going to have no questions to this whole presentation, huh? On the expense side, yeah, go ahead, Ed. No, we don't hire them. We process the visas for JCCs, for JCC overnight camps, basically. Sure. So the question was, does the variance in the visa budget affect our ability to bring shlichim into the U.S.? And my answer is that we simply process the visas. We're an authorized visa processor for the State Department. And so when JCCs, or there are third parties we also work with that work with JCCs, when they are bringing in shlichim, they come to us, they ask us to process the visa. We actually charge them what the State Department does. We make money on this. We just made less money than we usually make because fewer people came for shlichim positions this year. Did that answer your question, Ed?
Sort of. No, I'll get to you later.
Okay. Salary and benefits are better than budget. We delayed the salary increase that was originally budgeted for January 1 until April 1, and we also had some staff transitions. In the professional fee area, you can see we are over budget. That's related to a number of factors. One, we absorbed some of the strategic framework consulting that's already been spent this year. Barak's consulting fees, when he was onboarding, which were funded, are still sitting in this expense category. In addition, we had legal fees. Yeah, Brock charged a fortune, I know. We had legal fees related to both selling our Israel building, which we'll talk about later, and some ongoing legal cases, and technology consulting to keep our antiquated systems running were also higher than budget. Program expenses basically relate to the fact that the favorable variances, JCC Maccabi came in with less expenses than budgeted. Because we didn't run the Israel trips and those program fees aren't in the budget, the program expense isn't in the budget, isn't in the actuals either. So that's why those expenses are down. In general operating and occupancy, as we discussed, we had no rent. We had lower conference and credit card fees, and our marketing and technology costs were under budget. You'll see a line here that says contingency. So this is thanks to our new CFAO, Carrie, who said, maybe we should just plug a little expense line in our projection in case, once again, invoices come in after we close our books. So we have that in there. That's agency-wide. Any questions about that? So we'll take a look at what the results were by center and department within center. I know we're used to our departments, so we've grouped them in centers. So here you will see talent includes, Center for Talent includes our talent department, elevated, and inclusion. We already, so you can see that that is doing better than budget. We already talked about the fact that the Kivanim grant and corporate sponsorships are in there. That's what's driving that. You'll see there's no variance in elevated. Elevated is a fully funded pilot program. That's the pilot's been extended through 2028, the school year of 2028, and overhead is built in. So in addition to us not having any worry about a loss in that program, we also get overhead. In the Center for Peoplehood, we have JCC Maccabi, Israel Engagement, JWB, and the Mandel Center for Jewish Education. Driving that positive net, if you add them all up, that's still a positive variance, is the JCC Maccabi results that we talked about. We already talked about the negative results financially, which again is a timing issue, not an operational issue around the Mitabrim program. JWB ended up better than budget, and that was actually in their annual fundraising. They did better than we had budgeted. In the Center for Innovation and Impact, that is what was our experience department at this point, and so the positive variance there is the result of staff departures. And in general support and infrastructure, we just talked about development. So development is under budget, again, driven by the by our exuberant projection for the board campaign that was not realized. And then in finance and administration, we had budgeted all of the $280,000 staff cuts. If you remember back a year when I was standing in front of you, we had budgeted staff cuts. They were all parked in the management because we hadn't made decisions on what they were, so they were parked in that department. We never ended up making those cuts, but as a result of departures and how we timed things, you saw earlier that our salary and benefits were still better than budget. So that gives you kind of a look at how each different area of the organization is projected to perform for the year. Any questions about any of the departments? Yeah, because it's like, you know, it's a really little number that we had as the base, and a really big number we have as a surplus. Okay. Let's take a look at the balance sheet for a minute, what we're projecting for the end of December. So again, you know, it doesn't show up on our financial statements this way, but we separate out unrestricted cash from restricted cash, right? We live on unrestricted cash. You can see that unrestricted cash is up from last year, but if you look down a little bit, you'll also see accounts payable are up. Basically, we've accumulated a little cash as of the end of December because we were holding invoices waiting for a payment from MODA, which came in much later than it was expected, and in fact, we're still waiting for another payment. Our working capital issues are all around the fact that so much of our programs are grant funded. Many of our grants don't necessarily get paid in before we are delivering on those programs and spending on salaries. And so that's what constantly is driving our cash flow challenge. You'll see investments are up. So this is through November 30th. So we've had a good year in terms of the market for our endowment. So let's talk a minute about what you don't see on the balance sheet. What you don't see is the fact that when we have a cash crunch, we borrow from our restricted grant account to basically loan ourselves money in operation. So currently, right now, there's $500,000 that we have borrowed from restricted grants in order for us to keep operating. And then when we get caught up, then we start to pay that down. We were actually at about $700,000. We paid back $200,000. So right now there's $500,000 that we've lent ourselves. That's the cheapest money we can borrow. If I went and got a line of credit somewhere, we would be paying a lot more than what we were paying by borrowing internally. We are actually borrowing from a grant that is not really funding operations day to day, so we're not worried about it catching up to us and then finding out that we can't meet other commitments. The second thing you don't see on this statement is the internal borrowing from the endowment, where the operating account borrowed in 2013, 2014, and 2015 a total of about $1 million. It is now down to $959,000 after there was some payback. But we owe that back to the endowment. Our operating account owes that back to the endowment. So it's something that we have to keep in mind. Plus, we owe some interest. And those are things that are in our cash operation that just don't show up on the balance sheet. So if I freaked anyone out, here's your chance to ask a question.
Hello. And while everybody's thinking of their awesome questions, I just want to highlight, because we went over this in the Finance Committee, if you think about, the 2025 projection, there's the $440,000 or $450,000 surplus that you saw on the screen. There also were these booking errors, which basically were things that we didn't recognize revenue, or we did recognize expense. In both cases, we did it to our own detriment in 2025. But if you add back in that 380 plus the 400 and some odd thousand plus the 100, we're starting to get towards where, from an operating standpoint, as far as like what we're doing it and how disciplined are we being and all that, the agency actually, would have had a surplus somewhere approaching $900 or so $1,000. So the 440 is amazing, but we, thanks in large part to the success of Maccabi, and I want to applaud Sam and her team, not just from the fact that they achieved unbelievable success on the revenue side, but Michael mentioned it, even in the face of having that unbelievable success on the top line, they actually managed their expenses as well. So I just wanted to take a moment to say, that thank you on behalf of the agency.
I had a quick question, Jay.
Sure.
Or both of you. What is the governance around those unwritten borrowings? Where do they get tracked, and when who decides when that gets paid? And
So there's two. So if we go back to the borrowing on the endowment, there actually is a loan agreement that is tracking that, and so that's the governance. It was actually voted on by the board to approve borrowing money from the endowment. That money was used to make contributions to the pension plan, and so that's how that governance is. The governance around our cash borrowing from restricted funds is really a CFO, finance committee chair, and board chair conversation about where we are, what we need to do. There's actually no prohibition for us to do that, except when it comes to elevated, where we are specifically, and that is in a separate bank account, but for the elevated grant, we are not allowed to commingle those funds or borrow from them. But there is no restriction on any of our grant funds that we might otherwise consider restricted, which means they're just restricted by time and purpose. And so we're waiting for either the time or when that program is going to happen to spend those funds.
And Susan, just so you know, I mean, I think it goes without saying, we don't want to be doing this at all. And so one of the things that I know Barack has heavily emphasized, you know, he talked about being brutally honest with our funders. And one of the things I know in my time talking to Carrie of emphasizing is we want to be out of the borrowing from our restricted funds business. And so we do need to put forth a model where we can fund working capital. And on top of that, one of the biggest drivers is, Michael alluded to it, grants where we're waiting, you know, we're funding money to the field or personnel and we're waiting to be reimbursed. And that's one of the things that as our team has conversations with funders is letting them know, like, we're not in a position to be waiting 60 days to get paid for money that we're already, you know, for programs that are already happening in the field. So.
Yep.
Michael,
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Go, Scott.
Are you saying that the 4,000,007 or the 24,4, those should be bigger numbers?
No, what I'm saying, because we don't actually record the. Yeah, sorry. Scott's asking how does that borrowing reflect on the balance sheet, and it doesn't. So that's why I'm pointing it out, because we don't. It's one cash account. I'm just separating it out for illustrative purposes. We don't move the money between. You know, we don't record it anywhere because we'd be recording something against ourselves, and it'd be like a zero net. So it's really just our tracking it that we're doing. You know, the investments that you see are net of the borrowing. That's what we actually have in the account. It does not reflect what we borrowed out of it.
So you just have a due bill that's not reported on.
Correct. It's our due to, due from ourselves. Okay. Let's talk about the budget. So the priorities, as Jay shared, was to first start with just building a budget for 2026 as close to the 2025 balanced budget that we could build, and adjust that for things that we knew were going to change, and then create a financial transition, a runway to the new strategic direction and vision that would take us through the first year of this new direction while waiting for funds to come in from major funders. That's the idea behind what you're about to see. So if you looked at this beforehand, before we get into discussing it, what we're going to be voting on tomorrow is the green column, right? It reflects what I'm calling the roll forward budget with an asterisk. The asterisk reflects the fact that we're using some of the TICFA funds in our roll forward budget. We actually originally intended that all the salary adjustments would be from TICFA, but we've been able to absorb some of them in our base budget. And then the second column is what's committed from TICFA so far for 2026. And if you look across to that yellow line to the green column, you'll see $1,337,000 and change right? That is the amount from the TICFA fund that is part of our whole budget that we will be voting on, okay? I want to make sure that we just all understand that first, right? So our budget is the roll forward plus the new commitments, and then the green column is the total. Okay. We're all good on that? Great. So in our budget, there are a couple of assumptions we need to talk about. One is that there are some new positions. The Executive Director for Innovation and Impact is in that budget. The Senior Vice President of Development is in that budget, and the Chief of Staff is in that budget, as well as a Marketing Coordinator. Those are new positions that are in the total budget. The total budget is based on an endowment draw of 6.5%. That is the same endowment draw as last year. That is not our standard endowment draw, right? Our standard policy is 4.5%. Last year, the Finance Committee went to the Investment Committee and asked to make it 6.5%. The Investment Committee made that recommendation. The board, when it voted on the budget, supported that and the budget. When you get to vote this time, tomorrow, there's going to be two motions. And we did the same thing. The Finance Committee approached the Investment Committee. The Investment Committee agreed to 6.5% this year with a proviso. The proviso is that if we end up with a surplus, that we pay back the endowment anything we take out that's over 4.5%, okay? So if we take out more than we needed, we're going to pay it back. So that will be motion number one. Motion number two will be to approve the budget. So those are like some of the grounded assumptions in this budget. All of this, if we look to the right of the green column, is part of what we have identified as basically a $5 million TICFA goal, right? And so the new need and the new ideal are essentially the priorities that we will add to the budget if and when we raise that full $5 million. We'll talk more about that by center as to actually where those dollars are going. So Barack has talked a lot this morning about what our goals are for these three centers. What you see here and saw in the pre-materials, this is the same thing, is these are the priorities just for 2026, right? In terms of how we support executives, how we expand support for JCCs and core business areas, launching the new Mercaz Training Center, starting the plan for J Summit, and evaluating how best we can support early career professionals. Those are the 5 priorities in talent for 2026. We heard about all the priorities for talent going forward. So in the talent budget, the roll forward budget includes, I'm just going to talk about the differences between what we had in 2025 and what you see here for 2026. In the exhibits that you received on Friday, shows you exactly the 2025 budget, the 2026 budget for each of these lines. So for speed and just identifying what's different, I'm going to just talk about the differences without going back and forth. So in grant revenue, in talent, grant revenue will be higher than in 2025. Sheva received an increase of $65,000 from 2 existing funders, and we have the balance of the Kivanim grant that will be in talent. Corporate sponsorships, our budget is significantly lower. We only have Mifgash as a conference this year. We don't expect to generate the same level of conference sponsorships. You'll see down the road, we do think we can do better than $10,000 in sponsorships. You'll see that under the development department later. Corporate sponsorships, we just talked about. Program fees are also expected to decline Again, we don't have Procon. We only have Mishgosh. Procon was a big part of our program fees. The visa budget, we budgeted down was to match what we achieved in 2025. I'm hoping that they will be higher as more and more Israelis want to be shlichim again and come for summer camp. In the endowment release, that's higher because Meron isn't in Israel, so we will be able to draw more from that endowment. On the salary side, staffing costs will be down because we've done some staff reorganization and changes in position. Program expenses will be down, right? We have no Procon again. Elevated is moving into this new phase of a third cohort, which is smaller, and a sustainability phase, which is also smaller than the first 3 years of Elevated. So the total program expenses will be down. And then we will see an offset. Expenses in Sheva will be up because they're going to spend the money that they got as an increased grant. Overall, operating expenses will be down because we will have lower credit card fees from conferences. This is all related to the roll forward budget in talent. Then if you go to the next column to the right, you'll see talent committed. And the way we've tried to show this is the little X's mark what we're starting with the committed funds. And here you can see it's the rollout of the J-Direct Executive Advisors. That's in the committed funds. And then if you look at the need, you can see the X's all the way down. And this relates to all of the positions that Barak started talking about and the investment in Sheva and the next Kivonim cohort. And so those, if we raise that next tranche of funds, which would be 1.585 plus million, we will be able to start doing all those things. That's the way this works. Any questions about talent? Okay. Peoplehood. Again, we talked about this in the broadest sense. For next year, our goals in Peoplehood are to secure the multi-year funding that Sam and her team are already working on, to develop and expand Jewish family engagement initiatives for the field, to launch the JCC Camps of North America Task Force that Barak mentioned, to expand opportunities to strengthen ties with Israel. So one of those items is our grant with MODA. Our contract is now over. We are in a 2-month extension through February. We're in the process of trying to get that grant finalized for whether it's another year, 2 years, however they want to do that. So there is no MODA, there is no Mitabrim program in this budget because we don't have a contract. You'll also see that we want to strengthen our partnership with Route 1, but we will also see in a minute that our grants and expenses related to Route 1 will be down. Route 1 is moving away from infrastructure grants, which many JCCs have benefited from. We've put a lot of money into the field. We're sort of the go-between. They've also given us infrastructure money to staff this program. They are moving mostly to fund the actual vouchers and trips, not infrastructure anymore. And so our grant has been reduced, and in 2026, there have been very few JCC grants for infrastructure that were approved. So this is the roll forward budget for Peoplehood along with what is committed. So again, just as a reminder, this includes JCC Maccabi, JWB, the Center for Israel, and the Mandel Center for Jewish Education. So the changes from 2025 in contributions, we're expecting contributions for JWB to be higher, just as they achieved a higher level, so we budgeted a little bit more. In grant revenue, as I mentioned, Route 1 grant funding will be down. JCC Maccabi grant revenue is budgeted at $1.2 million, 2, is that the number? $1.1 million, somewhere in that neighborhood. That's not secured yet. That's pending going to the Marcus Foundation and being able to put a hard number in there. Government grants for MODA, as I mentioned, are waiting for a contract. Program fees, we expect to go up a little bit as Israel trips come back. Salaries and expenses will be down a little bit because of both Route 1 and MODA. So the staff that we have that support those are not fully in this budget because we're waiting for that program to get a new contract. Professional fees are budgeted to be up a little bit in Maccabi. And in program expenses, we would expect Maccabi, since Maccabi came in under program expenses last year, we sort of budgeted at the same level for this coming year. And again, no program expenses related to MODA. In the committed funds column, what we really see as the only piece that's in there is the transition for Daniel from starting as a consultant and moving on to coming on board full-time in July. And then in the need column, you can see that is around the residential camp business advisor and VP for JCC camps. And in the ideal, you can see Jewish Family Engagement VP and the VP for Arts and Culture. So again, as we follow the yellow row across, as we raise more money, we can invest in those new initiatives. Barak will have to make decisions because Tikva is not specific to a center. So as money comes in, Barak's going to have to prioritize. Are we doing peoplehood first or talent first, or what are we doing next? Yeah. Look at that. 2 microphones you get, Sue.
If we're going to focus on recruiting JWB chaplains,
Uh-huh.
where does their salary fit in, and will it be cost-effective?
So, well, first off, we don't pay JWB chaplains, right? Our goal is to recruit rabbinic students to go into becoming a military chaplain. If they are interested in that, we have a scholarship program that pays for their rabbinic education and some of their living expenses so that they can become a rabbi, and then they have a commitment for a length of time in the military as a chaplain to sort of work off the scholarships that we gave them. So we don't, they're hired by the military, but we will fund, we have a large grant to be able to fund those types of scholarships.
So it's in grants and then program expenses. Like for what our part in it is, we would be
Well,
getting
it's actually grant revenue and grant expense, but
Okay, grant expense, sorry.
no problem.
And before we turn the page on peoplehood, I just want to point out, again, we're budgeting
The green
know,
column.
we're budgeting the green column, and we're budgeting the things as they stand today. In this center, there are opportunities. Sam, Jeremy, the Maccabi team is working on some pretty ambitious, cool, multi-year funding, and so the scope of the impact they're able to do might go beyond what's on here. Similarly, the MODA, that contract is being, so we're working on what we know, but there are areas for growth that are, that are still out there that I assume in the months ahead we'll get more visibility on.
I guess the way I would frame that is tomorrow you will vote on a budget. The day after tomorrow, we have reality.
I'm just pointing out that reality for once is actually pretty exciting and positive as opposed to when I stepped into the role. So.
Okay, Center for Innovation and Impact. We talked a little bit about this already. We are launching a new improved benchmarking program in 2026. We're looking to expand the work that we're doing in field-wide surveys, research, and analysis. And we are hoping to roll out some shared services and cost savings opportunities for JCCs as well. So in the roll forward budget, the endowment release is really what's covering the professional fees, and that is the costs associated with JCC benchmarking. And then you have the salaries and benefits of the staff, which are based on the staff that we have, and in general operating and occupancy, they really are mainly cost increases compared to 2025 related to technology expenses. You can see that there's no funds committed in the committed category here, but there are a lot of funds, $450,000 in the need category. JCC Association has no CRM. JCC Association needs to overhaul the resource center. We need to have a registration package that we can use across the agency. There's a whole range of technology that you see here that the association is lacking and needs to move into the 21st century in order to best serve the field. Yeah?
Did you budget in duct tape?
Duct tape, exactly. I will donate the duct tape. So general support and infrastructure relate to the development department, the marketing department, and finance and admin. That's what this category is made up of. So obviously, moving in and sort of operationalizing our new space that you will get to see shortly is high on that priority list. Strengthening the value to our value to the field. We need to remember that JCC signs stakeholder partnership agreements that go through December 31st, 2026. We will need to resell to JCCs the value we are providing so that they will continue to be partners with us and invest in the movement and JCC Association. And then one of the other key pieces here is really thinking about how do we grow unrestricted revenue streams and how do we operate as the most cost-effective and efficient way possible. One of those goals around that is, as Barack mentioned, turning the Mercage Training Center that you will see into a rentable space that would become a revenue generator. And as we talked about before, making corporate sponsorship a new revenue stream is a real opportunity for us to think about and operationalize. So in this budget, for this center, we're expecting that contributions and grants will be lower than we budgeted in order to reflect more closely what we achieved in the board campaign for 2025. Those numbers are a combination of contributions and grant revenue. It's those two numbers together, the 917 and the 52.5. You won't see it in our budget, but because we are now looking at the center, but Annette has moved from what was the development budget to now the finance and admin budget, and we still have a senior VP slot in the development budget. Also, in our base budget here, or roll forward budget, is new fundraising software, which will bring us also into the 21st century and help us manage our grants better. And so that's already built in. In the marketing area, we've already talked about the marketing and finance and admin. We've talked about the affiliate investment, right? That is projected to be $800,000 higher than it was in 2025. We're being conservative again on interest income and budgeting a little bit less than we achieved, than we budgeted last year. The endowment release is pretty much the same as last year. It's our unrestricted endowment that we have. Staffing, we expect will be higher than the budget for 2025. We now have a new CEO for a full year as opposed to a half a year. And then we have a number of salary adjustments and position changes in the 2026 budget. And professional fees we expect will be down a little bit as we have completed some of our projects. It will be up a little bit because we will have in another area for marketing as we will work with a PR consulting firm while our staff person who does PR is out on family leave. So that is the general support budget, and the committed column is really reflects the fact that we now have rent to pay. Last year we budgeted for half a year rent. This year we're budgeting for a full year rent. We will have to pay a full year of rent, and we'll have technology cost increases. The other thing that we budgeted for the first time is Canadian exchange rate fees. We have never budgeted that before. It actually is about 30 grand a year for us, what we pay when we get paid in Canadian dollars from our Canadian JCCs. So we have put that in the budget as well. In the committed column, you can see what is in the committed funds here, particularly in the development area and in improvements. There's about 325,000 in improvements to the space that we're responsible for. Our landlord will have paid $1,150,000 in improvements. So we're only paying what was over that amount, but you can see what's in that committed column, and then in the need column there are additional goals for fulfilling this new direction. So if we get to the additional 568 or 450, we will be able to do those initiatives as well. Okay, that's all the centers we got. Let's talk for a minute. Thank you, Joanne. Let's talk for a minute about cash flow, since this is our royal pain in the butt. So what we're looking at here is year one of the committed part of TICFA. So you've heard numerous times that TICFA has raised $1.71 million. That is the number on the far right in the second row. That is a combination of pledges and cash. The cash on hand is $641,300. And then you can see how that cash is expected to come in based on the pledge commitments that we have. Below that, you can see how we will use that cash starting in Q1. And so at the end of Q1, it is possible we could be $61,000 short cash. Many of those expenses we can control, so pending new TICFA funds coming in, we can adjust to make sure that we don't short cash by $61,000. And at the end of you can see then our cash balance goes up until the fourth quarter when we would potentially end up $35,000 short cash. In all honesty, I think that we will have additional TICFA funds long before that happens, and we're not going to have to worry about that. The biggest issue for us is making sure that we are managing the expenses not to the pledges, but to the actual cash received. It's the only way we can do this without putting ourselves behind the eight ball. Okay? Questions about cash flow?
And I just wanted to also state that two things. One, I think, again, I tend to state the obvious. This slide represents the way we're managing our cash flow concerns with relation to the new committed things and the TICFA funding. This doesn't represent the fact that we, as an agency, and we've talked about this previously, we have an ongoing cash flow need throughout the year. hence the need to have borrowed 500 and 200, from our, so this is, this slide is confined strictly to the cash flow and how we're gonna address the concerns with the new. It doesn't represent,
Right.
the rest of the agency. The other thing to keep in mind, in addition to matching up, because this came up in the Finance Committee, in addition to matching up these 2026 needs and ideals with cash that is coming in from TICFA, it will also be important for leadership, and by extension this board, to be mindful of the things that we decide to launch and when we launch them, putting that into perspective of how are the conversations going on the other presentation that we saw today. It wouldn't make sense to launch forward with something just because we have TICFA money to fund 2026 if the indication from a funder is that we're not going to have the funding to fund it in 27, 28, and 29. So, that's just, it's nothing that's part of this budget, because all we're approving, like Michael said, is the green column. But the pace and strategy with which we execute the columns to the right of the green column, will be in lockstep, not just from how much success we have with TICFA, it will also be related to how successful we are with external funders.
Okay, let's take a pause and look at the two other initiatives that we have going right now that affect our cash. One is closing out the defined benefit plan. So we terminated that plan, that should say 2024. We terminated that plan in 2024. Thought I updated this last night. We got a favorable determination letter from the IRS. We expect to disperse funds the end of April. I expect that we will end up with, I'll venture to say, $500,000 or more extra as a result of the gift that David and Sharon made when we went down this path. That money will help by going into the TICFA fund as part of David's commitment. And so we should have an idea about what that number will be in February. We have the property in Israel. It says the lease on the building, right? We own a lease on the property in Israel. In this past year, we've been finally recognized as the owner. Proposals, actually, it says proposals are due today. They actually extended till Wednesday because they had a number of potential buyers asked to have till Wednesday to submit their proposals. So this whole bid process is a first round of proposals, then going back for a best and final. We will know fairly soon as to what those numbers are. And then I do expect it could take many months before we actually see the cash in our account because we have to have the money sit in Israel, we have to pay taxes in Israel, and then we'll know what we can bring back to the U.S. The offers that we get ultimately when the board approves this, the offers get run by the Finance Committee before we move forward. Questions about either of these? Yeah, Phil.
An idea of what you think that number is likely to be?
I would not even venture. I mean, the range was like $3 to $8 million, so I wouldn't guess. Okay. 3 takeaways from what you've just heard. 1, we're moving in the right direction financially. 2, the stakeholder partnership has been an incredible success. And 3, the board TICFA fund, this campaign to raise $5 million as a transition to this new vision is probably the most important thing we could be doing right now. Because the only way we're going to move this forward in 2026 is to start making these investments now. Those should be our 3 takeaways. I am done. I am done with 3 presentations. I love you all. Tomorrow you will vote on the green column, okay? Tomorrow, you will vote on the green column.
You will vote yes. You will vote yes. You will.
As I mentioned earlier, there are two motions. First, to improve the spend rate, and second, to approve the budget. And that is all. Thank you.
Before we break, I'm going to put her a little bit. Well, first of all, was there any questions about anything that you just saw? I don't want to.
Adrian.
But Adrian, don't say anything until they give you a mic.
Okay, Adrian from Orange County, California. Why don't we vote on it now while
This way you can
everybody's in
think
the
about
room?
it. This way you can ask more questions.
It's fresh in our minds. Just saying.
I'll leave. Look, that's above my pay grade.
I'll hold that thought for a moment. It was the way the agenda was broken out. Is there another question from anybody? Yeah, Jeff.
We changed the governance of the endowment from 4.5% to 6.5%.
No, we are temporary. The motion is
For
to
this
change it
year.
for a year.
Okay. What kind of income historically have you seen from the endowment?
As far as performance or what we have taken out? It's been well in excess of that. That's why. I don't want to speak for Michael, but
Through November, we're up at.
no.
Through November, we are up about 15. We're up 15%.
Yeah, and the idea is, like I said, if we, the way it's worded, if we outperform our budget in this year, we will try to bring that down effectively as close to 4.5%.
It may be worth mentioning that the investment committee was unanimous in their support of the request for the 1-year increase to 6.5%.
Thanks, Mike.
And then before we adjourn, I did want to give Carrie, I know she just started, recently, but she's already been deep in the work with Michael. She participated in our committee calls. We're very excited. I commented earlier about, that our principles in the Finance Committee are transparency and responsibility. And I know from when we interviewed Carrie and to the conversations I've had with her that she is going to be quick to get working on both of those things. And combined with the investment we made in technology and the efforts, I think it took years off Miriam's life.
I just really want to give a quick shout out, explaining what we've been going through for the last 6 months in that kind of detail. Yasha Koch, Michael, so thank you. Very different from our first conversations in March. We've come a long way in that months. Look, this is a big deal, this strategic framework of the 25 million, the plan, should it be more? We're also talking about a budget that's going to release close to 1.4 million out of the 1.7 that we need to raise a lot more. We're talking about an endowment draw again. The point was that we didn't want anyone to feel like this is not a board meeting going home to your homes like we have tomorrow morning. People might want to talk about it this evening over the party. You might want to think about it more. And that was our plan. These are massive moments for this organization, was to allow you to marinate, have conversations, hear from each other, which we thought was really good governance before calling something tomorrow morning. This is a big moment. A lot of us we have to really think about it and think about where this organization's been and where we're headed. That was our reasoning when Lacey, David, and I talked about tomorrow morning, having time to really talk about this more. If you're all so super inspired and you're ready to go, we can do that now. But our intention was that we have an evening to think about it, reflect, have conversations, and then bring it to tomorrow morning. So I would like to take a vote. I'm just going to do old camp style. If you would like,
Vote on the vote.
right? If you would like to, and we don't care. We're trying to be respectful of what we're asking you at this moment. If you'd rather have a little extra time right now, do whatever you got to do, meet us at 6:30 to celebrate and have a great evening, and vote tomorrow morning and have time to think about it, please raise your hand. Wow.
We've got 3 tomorrows from Zoom.
3 tomorrows, and who else is tomorrow? It's okay, hold your own vote. Who would rather vote right now? Anybody have any comments on why you want to go now? Why not, Gary? Information's fresh. Why not? A majority of the people, if you can hear me, voted that we vote now. David Peltz is saying the same thing. David?
If one person would rather wait till tomorrow, I'd rather wait till tomorrow. I agree with that.
Beautiful. Okay, we have 4 people waiting for tomorrow. Then, is everyone okay with David's suggestion then, out of respect for community? All right, well, we are going to take a vote tomorrow morning on the motions. Because of David Bialfa's comment. Wait, Lisi? For the people on Zoom, if you're not going to be here tomorrow morning, please let us know in the chat. If you're not able to come back on tomorrow morning to continue the meeting. And then if you'd like to vote on the budget now, communicate with Morgan through the chat. How's that? Don't know how else to say that.
If anyone's here who will not be here tomorrow.
Is anyone here that will not be here tomorrow morning?
So we have to be careful as I'm thinking about our governance structure, that we don't put ourselves in a place where, one, we don't have a quorum tomorrow because people aren't here, and 2, we don't have a proxy vote. So that's not in our bylaws. So we can't really say, I'm voting today for what I'm going to vote for tomorrow. Sorry to be the spoil sport.
We have a lot of other work tomorrow. A lot of other work. This is not, the board meetings are, we have a lot of work tomorrow.
Zoom folks will be here to vote. They'll be online.
So David, I think that out of respect for the community, we're going to do it tomorrow morning.
Okay, great.